why safety devices are needed in the first place, know different type of safety devices that are used to protect the process equipment, and have an idea how the various safety devices are sized, because proper sizing is extremely important when you are installing a safety device. Sorry. So types and usages of process equipment. First of all, vessels. You see vertical vessels whenever you pass through. I don't know how many of you have been able to visit a oil and gas or a petrochemical plant, so you would have seen it through your eyes. But vessels, there are two types, vertical and horizontal. They are basically knockout drums and two or three phase separators. Horizontal drums are surge drums, like you get feed into a plant, you give a certain amount of hold up time in that, so that if there is any interruption in the feed, your process within the process, your operation within the process unit doesn't get interrupted because of that. So that is a surge drum. And again, a horizontal vessel can also be a two or three phase separator. These are used to store liquids and carry out separation of phases as required. Then you see distillation towers, some those tall skyscrapers that you see when you pass by, those are distillation towers, which are used to separate liquids from miscible mixtures, which those liquids which we cannot separate by any other means, we have to use a distillation tower or a distillation column to separate those. Then there are pumps, centrifugal and positive displacement pumps used to transfer liquids from one place to the other. Compressor, same, its only difference from pumps is it is used to transfer gases from one place to the other. Then there are heat exchanger used to carry out heat transfer between two or multiple fluids. Valves, automatic or manual valves. It is automatic valves are used to control or regulate the flow. So there are flow control valve, pressure control valve, temperature control valves. So you give it a set point, and based on the set point, the valve opening changes, and by that it manages the flow. Manual valves are simple kind of on-off. This is known to block or you stop a flow completely, or you start up a certain segment and you let in the flow through that. So these are kind of manual valves are generally isolation valves. They are not supposed to be used to control. Another important equipment are the pipes. So pipes extensively used in process plant to transfer fluids from one location to the other, and they are very critical. Pipe design and pipe safety is very important aspect of a plant. Then is the storage tanks, finally, used to store raw material or intermediate or finished products, and some storage tanks can be as massive as a football ground. I think last webinar with Ashish, he introduced you to the refineries. So for the refineries, the crude storage tanks sometimes are massive. You can see if you get a chance to go to the Reliance refinery, which is I think now the second biggest refinery in the world. So you will get to know this. So these are some pictures to give you a first-hand view. So this is how a typical compressor will look like in a plant, a small one. Some compressors are massive. This is a typical heat exchanger, shell and tube heat exchanger, how it will look like in a plant. This one is a pump, a centrifugal pump, and these are the storage tanks. The round ones are bullet, so those are the spherical ones, sorry, are bullets. So those are used to store pressurized fluids like LPG or ethylene or something, and the other ones are normal hydrocarbon storage at atmospheric pressure generally. These are the distillation towers that I was talking about, the skyscrapers, and this is one of the example of a vessel. You see, you can see the mouse. So this is a horizontal vessel. So I would ask a small questions. In these pictures, you see these pipes are yellow. whereas this pipe is green. Again, this pipe is yellow. So, can anybody tell me why is it kind of somebody working is in this plant likes the yellow color, somebody here likes green color, or is there any convention? Can anybody tell me? Hello? Anyone? Why this why this different color convention? What's this? Okay, I'll tell you. The yellow color generally corresponds to hydrocarbons. So whichever line there is hydrocarbon flowing through it is colored as yellow, and green is generally for water. So the moment you see an equipment connected with green lines, you will know that it's water going through it, and yellow means hydrocarbon. So this color coding is also very important to classify the equipment's safety. Okay, so some simple things also will contribute to the safety of the plant. Next, how we now design an equipment? What are the parameters and what features it contributes to? So first of all, if I have a say vessel and I need to design it, how thick will be, how big will be, how of what material will be. So I need to know certain parameters. So these are operating temperature, operating pressure, what is the composition of the fluid that it is going to handle, what physical properties of the fluid that it is going to handle like density and viscosity, and what is the nature of the fluid, corrosive, erosive or abrasive, having solids and all. So based on these parameters, the design temperature, design pressure, material of construction, the thickness of construction, and the corrosion allowance of the equipment is determined. So generally for design temperature, you take a certain margin over the operating temperature and you fix the design temperature. The vessel is not supposed to operate beyond its design temperature. Same thing with operating pressure. You know the operating pressure says 10 bar and you design the vessel for keeping a margin of say 20% above it. So you design it for 12 bar. You won't design it for 50 bar. Why you will not design it for 50 bar? Because the design pressure will make the vessel thicker and becomes more expensive. Then how the composition of the fluid, if it has got some say H2S and water present, then it becomes very corrosive. So based on that, you decide the material of construction for that. If it is simple water, potable water needs stainless steel construction, whereas ordinary water used for industrial uses, you can store in carbon steel vessel or transfer it through carbon steel pipes. Corrosion allowance is also same based on the corrosive nature, erosive nature or abrasive nature of the fluid, you give a corrosion allowance. So higher the corrosion allowance, thicker again the equipment becomes. So safety designing of an equipment. So how you can make a equipment safe? So first of all, the approach is based on the previous parameters. You make a vessel intrinsically safe, means by design itself you make it safe. That whatever happens, whatever abnormal scenario happens, nothing will happen to my equipment. So it is designed within the boundary of the required design temperature and pressure. Say if for a pump discharge system, there is a pump which is discharging into a complex system. So you design the entire, hello, okay. So you design the entire pump discharge system for the pump shut off pressure. So what is shut-off pressure? Is the pressure which the pump can develop when its discharge route is closed. When we have blocked the discharge but still the pump is running, the maximum pressure that the pump can develop is called the pump shut-off pressure or centrifugal pump. So if I design my entire pump downstream system for the pump shut-off pressure, I am absolutely safe. I don't need to worry for the pump operation. Second, we have to properly operate the process unit. As in the previous slide, I told you that there are operating and design temperatures and the vessel is not supposed to operate beyond those conditions. So the plant operation people have to ensure that they operate the unit within the certain envelope of operating conditions. Otherwise, nothing can save your equipment from failing. Then is you provide proper automation to trip the unit in case something goes wrong. So many a times it is not possible to have a manual supervision over everything. Uh, it's very impossible. You can't do that. So that's why you need to have some automation. So what kind of automation? Generally, it is applied to the control valves, or there is another high level of automation that whenever, say, the temperature of at a certain point in the vessel is operating at say 80. So you give a trip point that if it reaches 100, it will close the heating supply. How? By closing the valve in the heating supply. Say steam, you are heating a column or a vessel with some steam. So the moment from 80 to 100, the temperature within the vessel reaches, by automatic action, the steam valve will close and it will ensure that the environment inside the vessel remains within the boundaries set by you. Okay. Yes. Then is the regular monitoring of equipment health and periodic maintenance. This is also very important, like for the movable, rotating equipments like pumps and compressors and all. We generally do a weekly maintenance. Like mostly, if you see, the pumps will be spared. So A and B pump will be there. So A pump will run and B pump will be spare. So for the next week, I will take A pump for maintenance. I will open it. I will check its health, whether the seals are intact, whether the impeller is okay and not. And by that time, B pump will be in operation. So again, I see that A pump is okay, or if there is some problem, I repair it and I again put it back. For the other big equipment like say distillation column and all, we do an external health check by say radiation check to check if the thickness of the vessel is as per the specified standard or not, and by that. This is also very important because if there is something wrong, we need to be alarmed previously rather than waiting for a catastrophe to happen. And lastly, even after all this, we have to ensure all the plant personnel are using proper PPE and strictly adhering to the safety protocol. So again, if any one of you get the chance to work or to visit a hydrocarbon plant, you will see how critical and important it is to have proper PPE and to maintain the safety procedure. Okay. Now safety devices. Now I have designed everything as per the my design parameters and all. So why do we need at all a safety device? Why to spend unnecessary money and how to? So why at all we need them? Okay, let's see. It is not always possible to design an equipment for the design temperature pressure of upstream facility. The reason is mostly economic. Now I gave you an example of the pump shut-off pressure previously. Now say for example, the pump that I am operating goes to multiple destinations. So for the because of the farthest destination, the pump has to generate a very high head which makes the pump shutoff pressure very high. So say
Hello.
it be, hello, yes,
Sir, sorry to interrupt, sir.
yeah,
Sir, I will have to mute you for a minute and I will again unmute you after some time.
okay,
So
okay,
let us
okay.
see if the noise cancel by that time or not.
Oh, okay.
Sir, is there any
Yeah,
magnetic device near your laptop?
my phone.
So can you keep it far away from your laptop because it's interrupting the signal? Maybe.
Okay, okay, let's see. I'll just leave the desk then. Okay, now I have kept it far away. So tell me when we can start
Sir,
once
you can
again.
resume your webinar.
Okay, okay. So I was talking about why we need safety devices. I mean, why you all have to scrap your weekend plan and sit here to know about safety devices. Why at all we need them in a plant? So it is not always possible to design an equipment for the design temperature and pressure of the upstream facility. So if suppose there is a pump which is pumping to multiple destinations, and because of one of the circuits we have to have a very high head pump, whereas the other circuits don't need that much pressure. So if we will not necessarily design all the associated equipment of all the circuits of the pump for that high shut-off pressure, because it will unnecessarily make the equipment very thick, and so the cost of the project or cost of the plant will become higher. So we would put safety devices at key locations to protect the entire system. So second is plant operation is not always steady, and upsets will cause conditions to exceed the equipment design conditions. Even in spite of looking at the operation and having automations in place, many a times we are not able to control the plant operation within the given boundaries. So it will invariably cross those limits and will prepare a safety hazard. And then automation is never fully reliable and is liable to fail and perform spuriously. You never know. You should never take credit of any automation to get rid of your safety devices. It's not at all recommended. And in my personal experience also, I have seen that because of some faulty instruments, a perfectly running system gets stripped and it causes haywire in the plant. So and then accidents may happen within the plant which will trigger a hostile condition, some fire here and fire there. In spite of giving proper training and all, people don't follow the safety procedures, and it's not only entirely human error. Sometimes maybe inadvertent situations happen which causes accidents and all, which also will give an unsafe condition. Then, if anything happens, we need to contain the hazardous fluids or need to direct them safely away. The whole of the hydrocarbon industry handles equipments which are extremely hazardous in terms of human life, in terms of environment, and we just can't throw them around. I mean, all of you know what happened in the BP oil spill, or I think recently in the Arctic. there was a oil spill from a Russian company. So those are damaging environmentally, and all of us are aware of what happened in Bhopal and recently in Vizag. What happens if you just release toxic gases into the atmosphere? So we need some safety devices through which we will contain the hazardous hydrocarbons or hazardous fluids, liquid or gases, and would safely dispose them. And finally, to save human life and process plant against catastrophic failure. I mean, uh, there was an incident in, I think, London 8 or 10 years back, wherein near Heathrow Airport, I think, where the fuel oil, the aviation fuel storage tanks somehow caught fire and it kept burning for 3 4 days, and it was catastrophic. So to avoid these kind of things, we need safety devices and to prevent damage to the environment. Okay. The safety devices, what are they and what they protect against? Safety devices are mechanical devices. They are not any fancy electronic gadgets or anything else. So they are hardcore, simple mechanical devices, and hence the failure probability is almost zero. That's why they are protect equipment damage by preventing overpressure. So they work by releasing a certain amount of liquid or gas which has been caused and which, if not released, will cause overpressure and will lead to a failure. It is the last line of defense. So you have designed your vessel as per the operating conditions and all those things. You have installed some automations and all to prevent them crossing your design boundary. But still, because of the factors that we described previously, there is a possibility of accidents or overpressure or any other scenes to happen. So our safety devices are our last line of defense, which if the safety devices fail, only God can help. That's it. You just simply run away from the plant. You can't do anything. One thing very important, you have to note, safety devices cannot protect against any compositional change. It protects against overpressure only. So if you have designed a vessel for non-acidic use, and if you start sending acid into it, no safety device can protect it. So you have to protect your vessel against acid freeze. So this thing is very important for us to know. They are mounted, the safety devices are mounted on, it can be on vessels, on exchangers, on insulating column tops, or on lines or anything. There needs to be unrestricted inlet and outlet to and from the safety device. Otherwise, it will not be able to protect. You put a safety device and you put a manual valve upstream on the line between the, say, vessel to the safety device, and you keep it closed. That's it. You are doomed. It's of no use to put a safety device. Similarly, you line up the inlet, but somehow you close the outlet, so it has nowhere to go. It will still continue to overpressure, and catastrophe will happen. So even if you put it, you have to ensure that the inlet and outlet lines are unrestricted to and from the safety device. As for other equipment, safety devices also need regular testing and maintenance. That's why many a times you will see there are multiple safety devices installed in a single vessel. Just to take one out, do the maintenance, do the testing, whether it is performing or not, and during that time the other one will be lined up. So like this. And you will know lately that detailed analysis is required to adequately size and install a safety device. This is very important. Sizing and proper installation is very important. We will know about it subsequently. So let's see how many types of safety devices are there. First of all is the vent. So it's the simplest form of safety device. Nothing is there, simply from the vessel or the equipment you just put a pipe with a valving connection and just keep the valve open or something like that. So no no high funda sizing and all is required. Just we put a do a simple calculation and we know what pipe size is needed to vent the things out. So it is used where the fluid is not hazardous for the environment, where example is say condensate collection system. You know, steam is used everywhere in the plant, so the steam when it is used for heating or in turbines and all, so it condenses and it forms water. So we will not generally throw that condensate out because, and we will recycle it again to make steam. So that condensate is stored in a condensate drums, and those drums are operated in atmospheric conditions. So generally those drums will have a vent to atmosphere. So that is an example. And sorry, the vents are also used uh, to release the test medium. So before an equipment is put into service, so you have installed the vessel. Say for example, a vessel you have installed. The vessel design pressure is 10 bar. So before starting the operation, we will generally test the vessel with water or air or nitrogen. You will test, you will increase the pressure inside the vessel up to 12 bar and then keep it locked, see for any leakages or anything else, and then you release. So the vent is used to release the test medium also. So when you fill it with water or air, with air or nitrogen, you open the vent valve after the testing is done. And then sometimes or few times flame arrestor is also installed downstream of the vents to prevent any fire incidents. Then comes the beautiful guys. So these are pressure or thermal or safety relief valve. We call it PRV, PSV or TRVs. So PSVs are the most common type of safety device that is used. It protects overpressure by lifting the spring. If you see in the picture, there is a small spring over there. So this one below is the inlet connection from the vessel. So the overpressure comes, the spring will lift and the fluid will pass through this line to the outlet. So this is how it will protect. Then comes rupture disc. So rupture discs are used where the process service is a corrosive one. You cannot use PSV because the process service may damage the PSV seat and the spring. So we simply use a disc with a preset thickness so that when the pressure exceeds a certain limit, that this disc will simply burst and the liquid will go out into discharge collection system. Then comes the pressure vacuum relief valve, the PV and RV. So previously we saw the PSV will only, hello? Okay. So the PSV only can release the liquid from a vessel to the external medium, whereas for PVRV, it will act both. It will take the fluid and discharge it to the external medium at the same time. It will suck in fluid from the external medium and put it into the tank. So it is generally used in atmospheric storage tank. We will see later about it in a bit detail. It allows flow both in and out of the tank. So then finally is the flame arrestor. It used to prevent explosion, stops flame propagation. So it is generally used in the outlet. Maybe say here is the good location to put a flame arrestor if it is open into atmosphere or there is a possibility of a flammable liquid atmosphere nearby. So we have done with the types and now let's see. How they work, safety devices. So I will mainly focus on the PSV since it is a bit a little bit detailing is needed here. So if you see, they are placed on the equipment, they need to protect as close as possible to the source of overpressure. So if I need to protect a vessel, I will not put this one at 5 kilometers down on a pipeline and say that my vessel is protected. No, if I need to protect the vessel, I need to put it on the vessel. Then it is more effective. The inlet will face the equipment condition. So this is where the inlet of the vessel will be. So whatever, it will always see the inlet operating conditions, this part. The outlet is routed to open or closed vent system. If you have seen that tall tower with a fire burning atop it, that is called the flare. So in the flare, all the PSV discharges are connected and it is safely burned through the flare header. So if it is a closed vent collection system, it is a flare. So this outlet is joined to the flare, or if a flare header is not available, it can be safely routed into the atmosphere also. The spring weight, as you can see, is there, which is set as per the design pressure of the equipment. So you can adjust the spring by tightening or loosening the screw above this, which hold this spring, and based on the pressure that is applied at this point, the spring will lift up. In case of overpressure, it will open this path and the fluid will pass through like this. So the moment the pressure falls down, the spring will again fall down and close this one. So this is how it will operate. The valve spring lifts and releases the content into the outlet collection system. As I said, the spring sits down once the pressure comes down. So for rupture disc, the disc will burst once the pressure within the equipment exceeds. The disc then needs to be replaced. So this is one difference between the PSV and rupture disc. The PSV doesn't need to be replaced every time it leaks. It will automatically sit down. While the rupture disc, once you know it has burst, you need to isolate that line, take the rupture disc out and put a new one in there. Again, I would say size of the safety device is extremely critical for overprotection. It needs to be designed very accurately, taking into account all the scenarios that can possibly go wrong in the system. So before we go into the detail of the safety devices, I think you should get familiarized with some terms that I would be using from now onwards. The first thing is the set pressure. Set pressure is the pressure at which the safety device will start to open and release the content. It is generally the equipment design pressure. So if I go back here, I would adjust the screw and will apply that amount of weight over it, which is equal to the design pressure of the equipment. So as soon as it exceeds this pressure from the vessel exceeds the design pressure, which is equal to the weight that is applied here, this will lift and then this will get released. And as soon as it is released, the pressure will come down, it will sit back. So that's why set pressure is a very important thing. Accumulation is the percentage above the set pressure at which the safety device fully opens. If I go back here, the moment if my set pressure is set 10, so the moment it reaches 10.1, it is not that it will open fully up. So at 10.1, maybe it will move only up to this and release. So there is a term called accumulation, which is maximum 21% of the set pressure. For different cases have different accumulation. So say 10%, I would not go 21 right now, say 10%. So at 10.1 it will start to open, and at 11 it will fully open. So this is how set pressure and accumulation works. So relieving pressure is nothing but the sum of set pressure plus accumulation. So for the previous case, my accumulation is 10%, my set pressure is 10 bar, my relieving pressure, the pressure at which the safety valve is fully open, is 10 plus 1, 11 bar. Relieving temperature is the temperature of the fluid corresponding to the relieving pressure. Test pressure is the pressure at which, as I said previously, the equipment is tested prior to the operation. It can be either done with water, you call it a hydrotest pressure, or can be done with nitrogen or air, you call it a pneumatic test pressure. It is generally 130% of the equipment design pressure. One thing we need to note that your set pressure plus a percentage accumulation should never exceed the test pressure. So one thing interesting, I don't know if you have noticed here or not, the vessel can actually see a pressure and can withstand a pressure higher than its design pressure. So my set pressure is generally my design pressure, which is 10 bar, say for example. So by the time the PSV opens fully, it is already 11 bar, which is higher than what it is designed for. So it can see occasionally it can see pressures higher than its design pressure, but it should never see a pressure higher than its test pressure. Hello?
So please continue.
Okay, okay. So this is a very interesting aspect. It can see, it can cross the design pressure, but it should never cross the hydrotest or the test pressure. So when we give relieving pressure, we have to make sure that my set pressure plus percentage accumulation has not exceeded the hydrotest pressure of the equipment. Then comes the back pressure, which is the pressure against which the safety device has to relieve itself. It is the pressure acting on the safety valve outlet. So it is the pressure acting here. So if it is releasing to the atmosphere, the pressure is zero or atmospheric pressure. So it has got an unrestricted path, it can go up. Only the line loss for the PSV outlet. But if it is going into a closed connection system, it can experience a certain back pressure against which it is going to release itself. So back pressure is also a very important aspect because higher the back pressure here, bigger the PSV becomes because it has to what should I say act more hard against a resistance to release the contained overpressure. Then, as I said, the pump shut off. I explained the maximum pressure that a pump can generate when the pump discharge is blocked. So that is the pump shut off. Generally, pump shut off becomes my uh, governing figure for determining the design pressure of a system overall. Then comes a term called flange rating or pound rating. So it is generally applied to the pipes. So based on the design conditions, we select a pipe for a certain rating which it can withstand for a given temperature. So generally pipe flange ratings are classified as 150, 300, 600, 900, etc. So what does that mean? So say if I say 150 pound, sorry, if I say 150 pound rating pipe and it is a carbon steel, then for 50 degrees centigrade, that pipe can withstand up to a pressure of 19 bar gauge. So if suppose my pump shut off pressure is 17, I will choose a 150 pound rating line. I will not choose a 300 pound rating line. Although it is safe, again, as I said, it becomes thicker and it becomes more expensive to construct. Whereas if my pump shut off is 60 bar gauge, I will have to choose 600 pound rating because 300 will be limited till 49 bar gauge. So that's why higher the flange rating, safer the design, but it becomes more expensive. Another term is the relief case. So whenever you sizing a PSV, you have to look at all the cases that can go wrong and cause overpressure. So those are called relieving cases. Or so we have to identify the relieving case and then the relief load. For each relief case that we have identified, we have to calculate the relief load, which is the amount of liquid or vapor that needs to be released for a particular relief case to prevent overpressure. Then comes double jeopardy. So there are say relief cases. So there can be, so you have identified that there can be 2-3 scenarios that can go wrong. Yes, it can. But we will never consider two things going wrong at the same time. That is called double jeopardy. Double jeopardy we don't consider for sizing a safety device. I'll explain it later once we come. And then in pressure drop, so whenever you are in a engineering consultant like me, so the very basic thing, the first thing that you learn is to do the hydraulic calculation. So when you are transferring a fluid from point A to point B, so because of the friction and there is a loss in pressure, you start at 5 bar from point 1, but if it is a 1 kilometer pipe, maybe you will end up the pressure at point B will be 4 bar. So 1 bar is my pipe pressure drop. So this is a very important criteria in PSV sizing. You will know later what I mean. So just keep in mind these terms, and then you will be able to relate it better. Okay, so PSV sizes. So there are different type of PSV sizes that are available to us, and then there is a API, American Petroleum Institute, which is the bible for global safety guidelines regarding the hydrocarbon industry. So this is how a API table will look. So if you see, sizes of the PSV orifice is denoted by letter D, J, L, P like this. So these corresponds to the effective orifice area. So if I go back here, so it is this effective orifice area actually, which the size denotes over there. So D is the smallest and T is the biggest. So each of the orifice size is accompanied with, you see, inlet and outlet flange size. What does it mean? Like if I put a T orifice here, which is a very big, this flange will have to be 8 inch and this flange has to be 10 inch. Similarly, for all the other orifice sizes, we generally have this matching inlet and outlet line size. So when you specify a PSV, when you tell the PSV size, this is how you tell that my PSV is a 2J3 PSV. Means it is a J orifice PSV with an inlet flange size of 2 inch and outlet flange size of 3 inch. 8 to 10. So by doing this, you will know that I have to install really a bigger PSV there. So 8 to 10 means it's a very big PSV. The relief loads are very high. Similarly, if I have put a 2J3, the relief loads are very low. So this is how you identify and express PSV in terms of the inner process unit. So after telling all these, why we need to have so much importance in PSV sizing? Why I am talking so much rubbish? So too small a PSV, if you have installed, simply will not be able to adequately protect the equipment. It's too small and it just will fail. Your vessel will burst. So you will say, okay, Abhishek, I will put a big PSV. What? I will put 8 to 10 PSVs everywhere. Why waste so much time with all these things? Just go on and put 8 to 10 PSVs everywhere. Too big a PSV, if it is installed, it will cause the PSV to lift to a very small distance and then sit back, which will cause the above then will keep on repeating for a multiple time and it will create a noise. We call it as chattering. Chattering ultimately will damage the PSV seat. And adding a bigger PSV is not also economical. So that's why we process engineers are paid, that we do the exact sizing and not compromising on safety, we propose the economical design. So now I think we know why sizing is so important, why I can't just go on putting the biggest PSV size everywhere. So PSV I hope I am not going too fast. You guys are still with me, I hope.
No, sir. You are okay with your speed.
Okay, okay, good, good. So PSV, I talked so much rubbish till now about PSV sizing and all. Now how the hell it is done. So let's see how we do. So as I said earlier, we calculate the relief load for each relief case. First step is you identify the relief cases, what can go wrong, what can cause overpressure. Then you calculate the relief load for each of the cases. Then you orifice area by considering the relief load, the fluid property. Fluid property has to be at the relieving condition. Keep it in mind always. It is not supposed to be at operating condition. It has to be at the relieving condition. My vessel is operating at 7 bar, but the set pressure of the PSV is 10 bar, accumulation 10%. So I have to take the property of the fluid, density, viscosity, Z factor, everything at 11 bar gauge and the corresponding relieving temperature, not at my operating condition. So relief load, fluid property at relieving condition, set pressure and back pressure. These four factors will give me the how much orifice area I need to release that amount of relief load. Then you go back to the table and see which orifice suits that required orifice area. So please be careful that the selected orifice area that you will select from the API table and between your required orifice area, there has to be at least a 15% gap. It's a thumb rule, it's not given anywhere. Like if your selected orifice area is say zero point 0.5 centimeter square or zero point 0.5 inch square, whatever, you will not choose a zero point 0.4 centimeter square or inch square PSB. You will have to choose 0.7. So suppose if I go back to this table now, yeah. So centimeter square. So I did my calculation and I found out that my required orifice area is 22 centimeter square. So obviously I'm going to choose a PPSP. I have to choose. I cannot go for L. So there is no rounding off here. Whichever suits my requirement, whichever is over my requirement, I have to choose. PSVs are not tailor-made. They are off-the-shelf equipment. Like you cannot tell the PSV manufacturer, okay, give me an exact 22 centimeter square PSV. No, he has got only this PSV is available with you, and you have to choose anyone between them. That's why I do a calculated orifice area and I select the PSV based on this table, which is suits my demand. Okay, and then after you have selected the PSV, you have to select the inlet and outlet line sizes. Means from the vessel, it has to connect to the PSV through an inlet line, and from the PSV, it has to go to the outlet system, either atmosphere or a flare through an outlet line. You have to size it properly so that it satisfies the pressure drop criteria. So there are pressure drop criteria which I will tell you later, which needs to be satisfied. Okay, so I have talked about some overpressure scenarios that happen within which causes overpressure to happen. So let us see what those scenarios are, what those relief cases are that will happen. So generally how we approach in the industry is I have all the cases listed down. A generalized table is there, checklist kind of thing, and you have to look at each case, look at your system and first tell whether it is applicable to your system or not. Yes or no, that comes first. Then when you say yes, then you have to do the calculation. Then your source of overpressure becomes a relief case. So there may be 10 cases which is general for all systems, but out of which 7 doesn't apply to your system. So for you, after you analyze all the 10 cases, only 3 becomes viable and you proceed with only those 3 cases. So this is how we approach. So what are the sources of overpressure? One is fire. So in a hydrocarbon industry, fire, it can happen. It can happen. You are doing a maintenance near a column with all the lube oil and all, and suddenly something happens and there is a fire. So external fire there, it starts heating up the uh, column content or equipment content, and it generates a overpressure. So for fire, one of the limit is applicable for equipment which are located within 25 feet from grade. So when I say previously that all cases may not be applicable, say one of your vessel is located at a platform which is 30-meter high from the ground. So for that you say there is no fire case applicable. So straight away you don't need to proceed and calculate the relief load for fire for that. But if it is at grade, as it is for most of the distillation columns or some of the vessels and all, fire cases are applicable and you have to proceed with that. So I hope you understand how the fire will cause overpressure, extreme heat input into the vessel, massive expansion of the liquid, vaporize, and it starts causing a massive overpressure. Just what happens in your pressure cooker. You keep on giving the heat and the water inside evaporates, expands, and it comes out of the vessel. The same thing happens here, and your safety valve is that vessel of the pressure cooker corresponds to. So pipelines will not need fire protection. As I said, they are generally in the pipe rack higher than this limit of grade that is there. So pipe, we don't protect pipelines for fire. Pumps and exchangers generally also are not considered because they are connected to a system, like pump will discharge into a vessel, and if I put a PSV on the vessel, it will also cater for the fire relief associated with the pump and its lines. Same is for the exchangers. So we don't treat them as standalone and provide a PSV everywhere for fire protection for each piece of equipment. We can treat it as a system as a whole and keep a single PSV to take care of some of the associated equipment. Then comes blocked in scenario. So as I said, you are pumping a system and suddenly you close the outlet valve at a certain point. So instead of having an open path, the pressure within the system will start rising, and it will be limited to the pump shutoff pressure for centrifugal pump. But if it is a positive displacement pump, there is no limit. It will keep on pushing and the pressure will keep on rising. So if I am not able to design my system for the given shutoff pressure, I need to put a safety device to protect the system. So when you are checking this case, you have to know the pump shutoff pressure, go to your system, analyze what is your system design pressure. If the pump shutoff pressure is say 17 and your system, if the pump shutoff is say 25 and you have designed the system for a 150-pound flange rating and lower than 25, then you need to put a PSV. But if your system is already designed for pump shutoff or a higher pressure, you don't need to proceed with this case. So like this, one by one, you take the scenario, analyze, see whether it is still applicable to your system. If no, forget it, go to the next case. If yes, go and calculate the relief load. Then there is control valve fail open and close case. So control valve, as I said, will have automatic controlling function. So sometimes it happens like for all automations, they fail, they go haywire, and suddenly a control valve will simply open 100% because of some spurious action or some malfunctioning. And then if it is a pressure reduction valve, like from a high pressure steam, you are letting down into a low pressure steam system. So if that let down valve fails open, the entire low pressure system will see the high pressure coming in, and the low pressure system is not designed for a very high pressure because of again the economics. So at that time you need a PSV in the low pressure system to protect against this control valve failure. Control valve fail close is often similar to the blocked in scenario, that suddenly a control valve which is supposed to remain open, it closes, and it corresponds to the same situation as if the system is blocked. Then there is abnormal heat input. This one is say in a distillating column, you have a reboiler at the bottom. So you heat the content, sending it up so that it vaporizes, does a heat and mass transfer, and you condense it. So sometimes it happens that instead of a certain amount, there is a high amount of heat that goes into the reboiler. Maybe the exchanger, I have recently cleaned the exchanger, and my heat transfer was not designed for a very high for this low resistance within the exchanger or anything. The steam temperature becomes high suddenly because of some abnormal operation upstream, and I am getting a very high input of heat. So at that time, what happens is, because of that high heat, again the liquid will expand, get vaporized, cause overpressure, and I need a safety valve for that. Exchanger tube rupture, shell and tube exchanger. At one side, say you have steam, other side you have, say, a hydrocarbon. So the tube can rupture, either the high pressure side will go into the low pressure side. It can cause a high temperature or some compositional problems, and also it will be a problem. Then cooling medium failure, again, the if I have a process coming into a column, say it needs to be cooled, but suddenly the cooling water supply to the exchanger fails because of some thing abnormal upstream or within the exchanger or anything. So the temperature which was, say, supposed to be 40 now becomes 120. So really hot feed comes into the system, and again liquid expands, vaporizes, overpressure, needs protection. Instrument air failure, all the control valves or automatic valves are operated through air. So the air we call in the plant as instrument air, which is supplied to these instruments. So sometimes the instrument air also fails. Maybe the air compressor has failed or the tube has come out or anything. So then the valves will malfunction, and similar to control valve failure, it will generate a overpressure scenario. Power failure. So if suppose power fails within a plant, so I can no longer run the pumps that is required to take out hot fluid from my system, or say my discharge pump or the pump that I use to take out fluid from the column has failed, but we have the incoming pump is still on, so it's a partial power failure. That also leads to overpressure. If it is a total power failure, that is becomes a totally different ball game. More means my cooling tower is not working because there is no power in the cooling tower fans and no cooling water supply. So things become very dangerous at that time. So these are called the global scenario. Reverse flow. So sometimes I need to, means two systems are interconnected to one another through jump overs or lines, and they are the reverse flow is protected by putting some check valve in the line. But in our safety world, we never consider check valve or non-returning valve in our or check valve to be a safety provision. We always consider check valve has failed or it has been installed in the wrong direction. So that is, again, wherever there is a check valve, it simply adds to the overpressure scenario. Thermal expansion is only for pipelines. So what is thermal expansion? So there is a fluid flowing through the pipe. Maybe it's a long distance from the storage tanks coming into the process unit. Sometimes it can be kilometers long. So suddenly you decide, okay, I will not use this line now, I will use that line now. So you close the valves within the pipe rack or within the boundaries. So there is still some liquid within that pipe segment, and there is constantly heat from the atmosphere, sun or radiation and all. And the liquid within that pipe segment, which is closed from both ends, it starts to expand. And it will not be evaporated, and it has got no space to get evaporated, but it will start to expand and start to have an overpressure impact. So to protect that, we put TRVs, thermal relief valves. So thermal relief valves, the beauty is for most of thermal relief valve, for most services, we don't need to size. They are generally 1D2 valves. If you go back to the API table, we simply, for each block segment within a pipe rack, it has to cross a certain distance or certain volume of liquid aircraft to qualify to have a TRV. We just keep putting TRVs within that segment of 1D2. No high funda sizing is required. Okay, now we have done so much about the overpressure scenarios. Again, I will tell you to note all sources of overpressure related to the equipment needs to be identified accurately. You have to go through the entire list and have to accurately identify which one is applicable for your system. Then relief load for all the identified relief cases needs to be calculated. Out of the multiple, say you have now out of 10, you have identified 3, say fire is applicable, blocked in is applicable, and say abnormal heat input is applicable, or say power failure is applicable. So out of the 3, each will give you a relief load. Say one gives you 2 tons, one gives you 1 ton, one gives you say 1.5 tons. So based on it, you have to do sizing for all the cases and then see which one gives you the highest size or the highest required or calculated orifice area demand. And then you have to select the PSV accordingly from the table. So first you do identification of all the relief cases, calculate the relief load. For each identified relief case, you have to calculate the required orifice area. Then you go to the table and select the PSV for the highest or the governing case, so that the non-governing cases will also be protected. Double jeopardy is never considered for estimating a relief load. Like you consider my system is blocked, at the same time there is fire. No, I will not consider it like that. It is never, it's a convention, it is never considered. Two failures at the same time. Like I have a power failure which gives me a 2 ton of relief load. At the same time there is fire which gives me another 3 tons of relief load. So I will not put a 5-ton capacity PSV. I will put a 3-ton capacity PSV corresponding to the higher of the relief loads. Like this. Very important is safety device size is based on volumetric flow and not mass flow. Hence, the relief temperature determination is very critical. That's why I always keep telling that relieving condition is very important. So, if it is a volumetric flow, then your property becomes very critical. The temperature, pressure, and the density and the Z factor all become very critical to size a PSV. So, hence, you have to keep this in mind that it is the volumetric flow which determines the size and not the mass flow. All physical properties of the fluid has to be reported as relieving pressure and relieving temperature, as I explained why. Never take credit or any automatic instrumentation if it is going to reduce the relief load. Say you are doing an abnormal heat input, so you will say, hey, there is a trip function there, so if the temperature reaches from 80, it will close the steam valve, so I don't need to worry, it is not a relief load, done. No, you cannot take trip as a credit to mitigate or to reduce a relief load or a relief case. You consider that trip function is not working. then you can, means when I say safety devices, it has to encompass across all the possible scenarios. So automation is never considered to be a safety mitigation step. Again, as I said, never take credit for check valve or non-return valve. We consider it, they have always failed. For hydrocarbon system, the global standard to follow is API, which is American Petroleum Institute. Although it is American, it is done globally actually. So API number is 520, 521, 2000. So these are various numbers of the standards. So whatever I have discussed here is totally based on API, and API is followed everywhere. In every engineering consultant or client consultant, API is the base document that needs to be followed. Finally, even if after doing all this, a foolproof design against human error is not possible. Even if you put a correctly sized PSV and all, you forget to line it up. Nothing. You cannot protect it against those kind of errors. So all the major accidents, if you see, they are due to human errors. If everyone follows the good procedure that is in place, the plant is will always run smoothly and safely. So you have sized the PSV properly and all those things. Now it is installation. As I said, it has to be designed on the equipment it protects. So generally multiple safety devices are installed, keeping some as spare, as you can see in this picture. This ensures there is always one safety device available in case one is taken down for maintenance and testing. The isolation valves upstream and downstream of the safety valve needs to have some locking arrangement to ensure lineup. I will tell it now. The distance between the equipment and the PSV inlet flange, if here is the equipment, this is the inlet flange, it has to be minimum, as close as possible to the equipment. Now, pressure drop, why? Because pressure drop between the equipment and the flange, it has to be less than 3% of the PSV set pressure. This is a API guideline. So if my PSV set pressure is 10 bar, so the pressure drop taken or encountered by the fluid from traveling to this point should not be more than zero point 0.3 bar. So you have to size the line accordingly, or you have to reduce the distance accordingly. This is a non-negotiable thing. We have to adhere to by this. Otherwise, the PSV will not function. Even if you have put a proper PSV, you have lined it up correctly and all. If your inlet line loss is more than 3%, it is not going to work. Again, the pressure drop at the outlet will also determine the back pressure. So ideally the back pressure is supposed to be 10% of the set pressure. So if my PSV is 10 bar, the back pressure or the maximum pressure that is has to relieve against here, it should not be more than 1 bar. It can be higher, it can be 30 bar or even 30% or 50% also, but then the PSV type changes. So first step is we will always try to reduce it to 10% by again adjusting the line size or by adjusting the distance. Okay, so just to talk through about for this one. So this is how a PSV lineup in a PNID or process and instrumentation diagram, which is the master diagram for the plant, will look like. So this is the line from the vessel going into the PSV. So this is one valve, isolation valve. This is another isolation valve at the inlet. So there are two PSVs, one spare and one operating, and these are the outlet valve. So when I told you about locking device, so if you see here it is written CSC, called car seal closed, and this is CSO, car seal open. So ideally this should also be CSO. So both the PSV outlet valves, irrespective of spare or working, they needs to be lined up always. And the spare one, the inlet has to be closed, and the working one inlet has to be open. So when I say car seal open, there will be one key available through which you will open this and close this. And without that key, you will not be able to open or close these valves. And that key has to be issued through correct procedure, and these valves always has to be opened or closed under supervision. That you cannot simply go like पार्क में टहलने चले और valve बंद करके आ गए, ऐसा कभी नहीं होता है. It never happens like that in terms of PSVs. So these are the locking device or the safety protocol that has to be followed for PSVs. Okay, so this is one typical kind of an imaginary plant that will I don't know if it helps or not. So for example, this is a raw material tank. There is this pump A which is going to multiple destination. One is going straight away to export. Say this pipe can be 5 kilometers long, going from one jetty to the other. And then there is a let down valve here. It goes to a vessel. From there, the vapor goes to a compressor. The liquid passes through a furnace, gets heated up, goes into the distillation column. From there, this is the reboiler, this is the condenser, reflux drum. So one pump, this is the reflux pump, it sends back reflux into the column, and one stream goes as product again. And from the bottom of the column, there is this product C. So one stream of this pump goes into the compressor discharge, also get mixed, and it's another kind of product, and there is a check valve here. So now see, when I was telling you this pump A, so this is a 600 pound rating system because it has to send it through to this distance. The shut off pressure is very high. So this side of the control valve is 600 pound rating, the system here, including this line. But here I don't need that much pressure here. So I am letting down the pressure here to a pressure which is suitable to this system. So this one, this entire side I have designed for 150. So this is what I was telling you. You can't, because if I design everything for 600, all these equipments will become massively expensive. So now see, say I'll do just few cases to tell you. So this is a control valve. So if it fails open, so this entire high pressure will be encountered here, which it is not designed for. So I have put this PSV here to protect against failure open of this control valve. So my system downstream is also protected for overpressure owing to the control valve failure through this PSV. For this line, it is designed for pump shutoff. It is designed for a 600 pound rating, but there is a valve here. So if I close this valve, there will be liquid entrapped here, which will be a thermal expansion scenario. So I have put a thermal relief valve here. So if I go now here, you see in the column there is a PSV. So what can be the probable cases? Can anyone tell me for the sizing of this relief valve?
If anyone wants to answer, please raise your hand.
Oh, you can raise your hands also, is it?
There is an option in your participation column.
Oh, good, good. Yes, come on, my jaws are now paining. Now you guys take over. Tell me, for the column top, what relief cases are applicable?
If anyone wants to answer, please use the option of raise the hand.
Okay, don't be afraid. Yeah, it can be anything. Don't feel shy or anything. I'm not going to design it as per your response. Don't be afraid. Anyone? Is fire applicable for this distillating column? Yes or no? Anybody interested? Okay, so let's see one by one what can be the possible relief scenarios. So distillating columns, as I said, it's mostly at grade, so fire is again applicable to this one. Then since there is a reboiler here, there can be an abnormal heat input going into it. So abnormal heat input is one. So this is a condenser here. So there is a cooling medium here. So cooling medium failure. It is this pump here which is supposed to supply a cooling medium here. So if the power to this pump fails, so power failure is also applicable here. And similarly, blocked if any valve is present here, control valve or anything, generally it is there. So if that fails, there is a blocked inlet scenario, this control valve closing, again cutting off the here cooling medium to this is again one scenario. Then in this one, this flow goes into the compressor system. So if you imagine the compressor shut off is your higher than this shut off, so there is a possibility that in case this pump is not working, so the this one will go and pressurize this system. So that's why we have put a relief valve here. So these are more or less how you approach, you look at a system, you have that list of applicable or the list of probable scenarios, and then you check whether these are applicable to you or not. If applicable, you go and calculate the relief load, you calculate, you estimate the orifice size, go to the table, select the PSV and then install it. Okay, so storage tanks. Storage tanks are a bit different proposition than the equipment put inside a process unit. Process units are generally compact. The equipment are placed very close to one another, whereas the storage tanks generally they are located in a place a bit far off from the process plants. So storage tanks, this picture if you see, there is a dent in the tank. It is not because of some external thing hitting or anything. It is because of you took out the fluid out of the tank and it just got मतलब क्या बोलते हैं इसको, it just got dented from inside, means पिचक गया जैसा कि हिंदी में अगर बोल सकते हैं. So safety devices for tank are a bit different from other equipment. Due to large volume of fluids handled, tanks need multiple safety devices. So when liquids are fed into the tank, the displaced volume within the tank needs to be sent out. So when you are filling liquid into the tank, there is a volume that needs to be thrown out of the tank. Otherwise, it can burst. So this throwing out is called outbreathing. Similarly, when you are taking out a liquid from the tank, there is a vacuum created within the tank, and then the external in atmosphere starts to heat, and this is what happens, what we have shown in the picture. This is what happened if the tanks cannot do in-breathing. Means the moment you are pumping out of the tank, you have to suck an equivalent amount of either air or nitrogen to maintain the balance within the tank so that it doesn't go into vacuum. So tanks absorb a very high amount of solar radiation also owing to its large size. So just what we said for pipes, that there is thermal expansion, and so for tanks also this thermal expansion or the thermal impact becomes massive. So it becomes a very almost a compulsory criteria to design the tank safety devices for outbreathing, inbreathing, and thermal radiation. So for tanks, we generally put a PVRV as we have explained you. So PVRV needs multiple, there has to be multiple kind of safety devices. One of them is the PVRV. So when you are putting in liquid into the tanks, so the volume displaced will be released through the pressure valve of like which acts similarly as a PSV. So the tank vapors will go out like this, and when you are pumping liquid out of the tank, so it will suck air into the tank to maintain the integrity. Similarly, when thermal radiation, it is absorbing thermal radiation, it is getting heated up and getting vaporized, it will release itself through the PVRV here. So why this emergency valve is there? Fire. If there is a fire out in the tank burned or anything else, it has to be protected against fire also. So no PVRV is big enough to protect against fire case in a storage tank. So what we do is we put in one of the manways, we put this emergency valve or emergency hatch. So whenever there is fire, simply this hatch will open up and it will release a massive amount of your hydrocarbon or the tank content. So most of the time, because they are located in a remote place, in a plot, in a plant plot, they are generally released into atmosphere. There is no flare header that runs across the tank farm. Where the tanks are located, we call it a tank farm. So tank farm generally has got no flare that comes out of the tank is generally vented to the atmosphere. Since nobody generally visits there and the tank farm is a remote location, so the human risk factor is very less, even if it is open to atmosphere release. Flame arresters, as we said, flame arresters, whenever there is an open to atmosphere release, we put a flame arrestor mostly downstream of the release to prevent any fire. So if you see here in the picture, it is used as a backup safety device. It is not like you can only put a flame arrestor. There has to be a safety device, then the flame arrestor has to accompany it. So it is generally a kind of this arrangement here to the downstream of the safety device, and this side maybe is open to atmosphere. And then within this portion is this element. So whenever there is a typical gas flow from this direction and the source of ignition of the flame when it travels here, it just dissipates the flame and reduces the temperature, and hence it uh, takes out the possibility of fire, because in the fire triangle you need temperature, fuel and air. So out of that element of the triangle, it takes out the your element of temperature. So that's how it protects. Okay, any questions? That's all that I had prepared and shared, tried to explain to the best of my ability. So please shoot some questions.
If anyone wants to ask any question, please use the option of raise a hand. So wait a minute.
Yeah.
There has been some problem here.
Oh.
Yes, Suman Shekhar, you can ask the question.
Yes, thank you, sir, for a nice lecture on the safety devices for the process equipment.
Thank you. Suman or Shekhar? What? How shall I call you?
Dr. Suman Shekhar, anyone that you can say.
Okay. Please proceed.
Actually, I'm an assistant professor in chemistry department and completed my PhD in chemical engineering. And so designing and manufacturing the instrument for the conversion of the waste heat to electricity.
Okay, that's good.
So I want to know that is there any process or is any system in oil and gas industry where we can find out the waste heat in the form of solid, liquid or gas, which can be utilized into the production of the electricity?
Okay, yes, there are like in the furnaces, we have some flue gas temperature monitoring system. So if you see how
Yes,
the
sir.
design has evolved in the furnaces, so if at the flue gas outlet, what should I say, the channel. So we
Yeah.
maintain and monitor the temperature of that one, and based on that, we generally put multiple coils of either steam or the heating medium in that. So generally, if you see, I'll tell you my example in a cracker where we crack a naphtha into say ethylene or propylene and all. So the first step is the furnace where we heat the naphtha into a very high temperature to break it into elements. So when the flue gas leaves the furnace immediately, its temperature is around say 500, 600 degrees. So we
Okay.
put a bank of steam into that one and make the steam superheated. So we recover a certain amount of heat there. Then we put a bank of naphtha coils above it. So we preheat the naphtha. Then we put another bank of water to heat the boiler feed water. So like this, there are various banks of fluids that we put in the flue gas chamber, and that ultimately that heat goes and it is used for steam generation, which can be used in turbines to generate electricity and makes the entire process heat efficient.
Thank you for sir. Actually, we are working on the organic Rankine cycle through which we
Okay,
can convert it to the electricity.
okay,
I also applied for the NTPC where the flue gas releasing
okay, okay,
temperature around 144.
okay.
We have also assembled the same instrument in the Tata Steel.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
So when I have heard about you, that I am very, very pleased to hear you. Thank you, thank
Oh,
you.
good, good. Nice to hear about your work also. Very good, very interesting. Very good. Well done.
If you don't mind, then I get your contact details.
Sure, sure. I'll pass it to you. No problem.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So we have another person,
Please.
Mr. Abhijit Dado, sir. He
Yes.
wanted to ask few questions.
Of
May I?
course.
Sir, he wanted to ask what is process safety management?
Okay. Process safety management is kind of it's a very broad use. So what today what we presented safety device, it is only a part of it. So process safety management starts and covers from the moment you enter a plant, like what are the hazardous things are present in the plant, and then how the plant is designed to handle those, and then how you should behave or how you should means work within the plant to have it operate safely, and then finally it is the safety aspect of it. It also will include your fire and gas alarm and protection system. So process safety management is kind of this overall this broad thing. Like when I said like in terms of you have to do any maintenance work within a plant. Say for example you will be taking out a pump out for a maintenance and put it there. So what kind of precautions that you need to take? You just cannot simply go and start dismantling a pump. First of all, people who are working in the shift, we have to issue a work permit. We have to isolate that pump. We have to ensure that the pump is hydrocarbon free. We have to ensure there is no electric connection to the pump. Then somebody has to tag out, lockout, tag out is a very common term used in the plant industry, that there is no power to that equipment and there is no hydrocarbon content in the equipment. It is properly isolated. Nothing is leaking there. Then under supervision of the plant personnel, you take out the pump and then you do the work and put it there. So it's everything that you can imagine. Each and every step within the plant it's supposed to be supervised, controlled, and have organized in a safe manner.
Sir, we have another question.
Yes.
What are ISO standards for safety?
ISO, I think ISO standards we don't generally follow for our hydrocarbon industry. What we follow is only the API. So really for hydrocarbon industry, oil and gas, API is the governing subject. Yes, ISO, we don't generally do that. Even for Indian clients, we haven't done ISO. Only the Indian boiler code we have followed for steam equipment. Other than that, it's API everywhere.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sir, whosoever has to ask the question, I will be unmuting them.
Okay, please.
Yes, someone has raised a hand. Please ask your
Please,
question.
please.
In case of TRV,
Hmm.
can position makes a difference? Means if we mount it horizontally or vertically?
No, TRV is generally are mounted vertically. You don't mount the pressure with safety devices horizontally. All the PSVs, TRVs are always mounted vertically because
But
that is the way. Yes,
if we are mounting on the pipe
yes.
in the process kettle, we'll definitely go horizontally, but vertically. But
Hmm.
in case of piping, does it make any
Hmm.
difference?
No, you always have to install it vertically. You cannot install it horizontally. That's why. It is first of all, TRV is always installed on pipe. It is never installed on a process vessel. So whenever you install it horizontally because that is where the overpressure will happen. And from the base, the liquid will expand towards the upside, and from there it will. So that's why I keep mentioning that you have to put it as close as possible to the source of overpressure. So it will expand and try to escape from the top. So that's why it is important you put it vertically. And it is always installed on a pipe. So whenever there is a pipe, you put TRV. Whenever there is a vessel, you put a PSV. Are you satisfied?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else who has the question? Please kindly raise your hand. So I guess we don't have any further questions.
So thank you all for your attention. You wasted your weekend. I'm again telling you sorry for that. Although I don't know how many of you had plans for weekend in this lockdown, but still it was very nice to have so many of you listening to this webinar and taking part. So thank you very much.
So before ending, I would request now Dimple Kadu to speak a few words.
Today, on behalf of AICH Student Committee of AISSMS COE, I extended a really hearty vote of thanks to our guest, Mr. Abhishek Mukherjee, who spared time from his busiest schedule to guide us, and this will surely be going to help us in our future. And I also thank our faculty coordinator, Mrs. Bavankar ma'am, and HOD sir, Mr. Dange sir, and principal sir for helping us to organize this webinar. And finally, I also like to thank faculty member and student who are present here for attending this webinar. Your presence really add on this webinar. Thank you. And feedback form has been put on chat box, so please kindly fill this to ensure your certificate. Thank you.
Thank you all for giving me this opportunity, especially Kanchan. She had been in constant touch with me to uh, make sure the presentation is up to what, which can be of maximum help to all of you. So it's a very good initiative, and I hope you guys all the best, and hope to work with some of you in this process industry, and maybe all the best for your future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Abhishek.
Thanks, Kanchan. Thanks to you. Pleasure is entirely mine.
So with this, I call this session to an end. Please everyone leave the webinar.